Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really fundamental shift in global power. For decades, we've thought about petrostates, right?
Absolutely. Countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the UAE, their power built on oil.
Exactly. Kuwait, Iran. But now, something else is emerging. People are talking about electrostates, nations moving towards electric power.
A whole new model.
And that brings us to today's source. It's an article from Matali Rari, just out yesterday, August 13th, 2025. And it poses this big question. Is China the new electrical superpower?
It's a fascinating question, especially when you consider what the IEA, the International Energy Agency, says.
Right. They call electrification one of the most important strategies for reducing carbon emissions from energy. So it's strategically vital.
And if that's the future, the article really paints China as, well, the undisputed leader in this race, leaving others quite far behind.
Okay, let's dig into that. The article throws out some pretty striking numbers. China's electrification rate, it's hit 30%.
Right. And just to clarify for everyone, that rate basically measures how much of the final energy people actually use comes from electricity versus, burning fossil fuels directly.
So 30% for China. How does that stack up?
Well, compare that to the European Union and the US. They've both been kind of stuck hovering around 22% for years now.
So a noticeable gap already.
A significant gap. And what's interesting is where China is pulling ahead. The US might still lead slightly in, say, electrifying buildings.
Okay.
But Beijing has really closed the gap in industry and in transportation. They're way out in front of both the US and Europe.
Yeah, that transportation piece really jumped out at me. Get this. In 2024, nearly half, almost 48% of all new cars sold in China were electric.
47.9%, yeah. Astonishing number.
Astonishing. Especially when you look at Europe, where it was less than 23%. That's more than double the rate.
A huge disparity. And it's not just passenger cars, is it?
No, not at all. The article also talks about their high-speed rail network. It's already massive, 35,000 kilometers.
And still growing. They're projecting 60,000 kilometers by 2030.
Just to put that in perspective for you, that network is already 5 times bigger than Europe's entire high-speed rail system.
Wow. 5 times.
So, okay, this raises the obvious question. Why? Why this incredibly aggressive push?
Well, think back to when Xi Jinping took power in 2012. China was already, the world's second biggest economy.
Right.
But it had this major vulnerability. Heavy reliance on imported oil and coal still does, to a large extent.
Ah, okay. So this isn't just about being green, it's about energy security too.
Very much so. That dependence, combined with, let's say, geopolitical tensions, seems to have really spurred Beijing towards electrification and, crucially, towards controlling the raw materials needed for it.
So it's a strategic pivot, moving away from reliance on the old petro-geopolitics towards something new they can potentially control more directly.
Exactly. It's about national security, economic independence, and it fits into their broader strategy, too. China's positioning itself as a leader in what people call the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
You mean things like AI, robotics, IoT?
Yes, all of that, alongside massive investment in renewables. And it's paying off economically. In 2024, clean tech, especially renewables, made up 10% of China's GDP.
10%? That's substantial.
It is. And maybe even more impressively, it accounted for a quarter of the country's entire economic growth that year.
Wow. Okay. So strong economic drivers, clear strategic imperatives. But let's talk about the climate angle.
Right, because China is the world's largest greenhouse gas emitter. That's unavoidable context.
And their energy sector emissions actually hit a peak recently, didn't they? Because of burning more coal.
Yes, that's right. Although Beijing has officially stated its plan is to start gradually reducing coal use between 2026 and 2030. They expect coal consumption to peak next year in 2025.
Okay, so there's a plan to reduce coal eventually.
And this is a really interesting point in the source. While they're doing all this electrification, China also plans to keep building new coal-fired power plants right up until 2030.
Wait, new coal plants until 2030? That seems, contradictory, doesn't it? If the goal is electrification and lower emissions.
It certainly raises some questions, about how consistent the strategy is, or maybe how fast the transition can realistically happen on the ground.
Is it maybe about ensuring they have enough power during this massive transition, like a backup plan? Or does it signal that the transition might be slower than the electrification numbers suggest?
It could be a bit of both. It definitely points to the huge challenge of balancing surging energy demand with long-term green goals. It's a complex picture.
So summing this up a bit, we're seeing China race ahead on electrification transport, Industry driven by a mix of energy security needs, economic ambition, and yes, climate pressure.
Absolutely. It's transforming their economy, their infrastructure, and really their global influence. They're carving out a unique position.
What really strikes me is how they seem to be turning a past weakness, that energy import dependency, into a potential future strength.
That's the key insight, I think. It's not just about using electricity. It seems to be about controlling the whole chain, from the mines for the minerals right up to the batteries and the electric cars, building the energy system for the next century.
A fundamental shift, then.
Truly profound, potentially.
So, the big question for you listening is, how might this rise of electrostates, especially with China leading the charge, reshape everything? Global economics, who controls resources, international relations, especially with everyone juggling economic growth and climate action.
It's something to really mull over.
Indeed. But based on this deep dive today, it certainly seems China is well on its way to becoming the world's first true electrostate.